Bonnie? Bonnie, talk to us.
Good everybody. I think we're just waiting for a little bit of IT expertise.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I'll wait around.
Yes.
Kia ora everybody. Thank you very much for inviting us in this morning to speak to our item. We've been through a very long couple of years of work around the People, Water and Land programme. So this morning, as we've discussed in our workshops over the past 2 years and as recent as last week, this morning is a item around seeking approval in principle for the values and objectives package, which I'll ask Ava and Rachel to speak to, which is a real milestone for us. This is a significant piece of work and does set a foundation for our council's work around fresh water for the foreseeable future, and also for the work of the Regional Forum, who are providing advice to both the board and the council on how we might achieve our outcomes for fresh water over a generation. So this is quite a significant item, and I'm pleased to be here this morning to answer any questions you have. I'll also hand over to Rachel and Ava just to speak to the key points.
Thank you, Bonnie. So through you, Mr. Chair, the point I just wanted to highlight, I think we've spoken in workshops over the last few months about the contents of the package and the rationale behind it, but just to note that this is a key step, admittedly, but a step on a journey. We've got quite a number of further steps to take, including an assessment of the new national policy statement and what that means, but we think we're in a really good position with what we've got, and it will allow us to go forward on that journey with a strong base, and just also to acknowledge the really hard work that's been done by the technical team to bring the community and iwi work streams together, and the fact that that work has been quite innovative and groundbreaking. So there are the 2 points I wanted to highlight.
Yeah, I think I concur with what Rachel and Bonnie have said. I think the fact that we're now here and discussing this is already a sign of how far we've come. I think the fact that we've heard from people around the country and other regions on how forward-thinking and how innovative the approach that has been taken by some of the staff and the technical team has been is a real highlight of this, and I just want to emphasise that. Thank you.
So essentially, we're seeking approval to continue, and in the fullness of time, we'll have a comprehensive strategy placed in front of us, which we will tick off. So we're just seeking approval in principle to keep going. That's as I understand it.
And so post this meeting, the reports that were in Objective Connect will all be made live, and Adrian will comment on a moment on the communication plan around that. The key thing is the direction there, I guess, to the Regional Forum to proceed using the bottom of the HORA envelope to assess the implications for various methods and limits. So it's some direction to the Regional Forum for the next steps, as well as those other recommendations around testing options for achieving the bottom of the HORA envelope, or a state of HORA wellbeing in a staged way, acknowledging that that whole package is going to be out in the public domain. And there is another step though around the national policy statement and doing the work to see what the additional info is we need to bring in as a result of that. And also the fact this provides direction not only to the Regional Forum but to our own internal programs in that freshwater space.
Right, thank you for the explanation. I was going to say, Councillor, there's questions now. Councillor Guy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wonder if I could just ask, I'm just wondering about the Regional Forum and their preparedness in terms of their awareness of the principle, not the principles, but particularly from Te Ao Māori's side, do they know, are they prepared, do they know how to think about what we're presenting here in the same way that do we councillors know? Are we upskilled enough in understanding what's meant by some of these key terms?
Through you, Mr Chair, thanks, Mr Guyton. It is definitely something we're cognisant of, and we've been working with the forum through the 2 years to build their knowledge through the work from the Runanga and Te Ao Marama. Sharing those concepts, thinking about those concepts. There's actually quite a lot of knowledge within the group of the regional forum themselves, so that has been really helpful to upskill other members of the forum. That's definitely a journey that we're all on, so we plan to continue to build that knowledge. We have a workshop which Dean is preparing to deliver in Te Anau on the treaty, and again exploring those concepts. So we have definitely a plan to keep building that and working through it, but these concepts are important. They are embedded in the National Policy Statement for Freshwater Management, so it's up to all of us to make sure we do upskill and as much as possible understand those concepts and be able to apply them in this way. So definitely on our minds and definitely part of the program that we're building.
Further to that, Mr Chairman, if I may, in your view, so it's the same question except now I'm asking about the council here, the governance. Do you feel that we are in a position, I suppose it's a difficult question for you, can't really comment, so I'm wondering aloud whether we are sufficiently aware of what it is we're measuring against, or what it is, how the framework that we're going to apply to this to have a full understanding. Given that,
rather than comment on the capabilities of the councillors, I think it might be better if you kind of explain the process by which we can take our responsibilities.
that's a good idea. Maybe I could add, have we been through a sufficient program of learning, I wonder, to make us ready for this decision, because it's a significant decision.
Through you, Mr Chair, we have been sharing the same information that we're sharing with the Regional Forum with yourselves through the workshops that we've been holding largely every month for the past 12 months. So we are also cognisant of that, and there are other things in play which I know Will has got on her mind about how we can help the council in general to also upskill in this space too. So I think it's, from a people and land perspective, I'm very cognizant that Ava and Dean and I have been thinking about how to help you to understand these concepts as well. Again, it's a journey.
Councillor McCallum.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Well, first of all, I think we need to acknowledge that the work program and bringing the two objectives together is groundbreaking, and as I understand it, it's been the first in New Zealand. So, well done. I think it's brought things together in a way that now we can move forward. I'd like to make one or two comments, Mr Chairman, if I may. I found that fact sheet that was given out last workshop very, very useful. It's from the primary industries, and I think as a councillor to have Mr. Councillor Guyton over there, I found that really useful to read through and understand the principles and the steps of what was happening. I'm not sure whether the community is when you look at all the gap analysis and all the information that you sent out for this paper, are fully up to speed with where things actually are at and what change actually means. I think we're going to have to communicate that very well through this next period of time. But reading through, I'd really like us in the forum to, if we could bring the land sustainability consents and compliance alongside them at an early stage to start to understand these concepts that we're bringing through and what it actually looks like and means on the ground would be very, very useful at an early stage. I think it would help us as council, and I've seen that conversation a number of times around this table. We think we know where we're going, we understand where we're going, but we actually see it in rules and policies and objectives, and we're going, well, that's not quite what I meant, and we have to go back and work that through. So I think we need to bring that down to usable, workable solutions on farms and in industry and around the province, as well as there may be some things we need to do we haven't thought about yet, and there may be some stuff that we can tweak to make it work. I think it's important, Mr Chairman, that we actually move forward with this and get it into the forum and get it underway, but we actually need to as others have mentioned, make sure that we're fully aware of this as well. And this is going to be quite a tight timeframe, and there's going to be quite a bit of communication needed to understand, and we may need to have some meetings to make this work. But I just want to thank, through Mr. Chair, the Chair Mara and the team that have helped us through this. It's been a interesting and quite exciting journey, and I look forward to where that ends up in the future.
The issue has been raised, are there any gaps in sort of the councillors' cognizance of what's happening and how it's happening and the way forward, and if there is, what do we need to do to address that? So that's probably something we could think about going forward. It's an expression of Councillor Dighton, and we'll just leave that sit there. Chairman Hogg.
I did raise it.
I'll go for Ellen.
Oh, right, sorry,
Thank you.
I didn't see you. Councillor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to acknowledge also the work's done by staff to put this all together. I mean, there is substantial amount of work that's gone on. The size of some of the reports that have come to us to look at prior to this meeting is as much, I think, as we've had on some occasions. And I know some of them we've seen before in a draft form, and I know this whole process is still in a draft form. So I certainly appreciate that we will have time to try and work our way through some of those reports, because I think, I mean, there's expertise in this room, but there's probably not full expertise as well to understand fully what we are releasing, I guess, in this information, particularly with the gap reports that are in there. And there's 245 pages of attribute, state and gap reports, so it's a significant document to wade through. And again, we're not water scientists as well, so we appreciate the expertise of our staff and I guess the wider industry, who will probably take time to look through it, and one hopes there'll be comment and acknowledgement. And I guess if we get some pushback, then I guess we need to know how to respond to that too. But it's a substantial amount of work, and I guess it'll take us forward. I mean, 25, 30 years, I'd like to think that a good number of us will be in there around still during that process or that time frame. But yeah, it's a journey that we're on.
Molly.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just to respond, there is some technical working groups establishing at the moment, one around science and which Karen Wilson's leading from here, so that's been underway for the past couple of months, and it's a really useful forum for various industry, science people and others to feed into the work that's being done, and they are giving us some useful feedback. So that's underway and will continue through the next phase as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wonder if it's helpful for Adrian to comment. We've been working to develop up the frequently asked questions set and communication messages, which will be provided to you after the message. We've been testing those both internally and with some stakeholders that offered to help. So yeah, we're working on getting the messaging right for the wider community, but noting it's going to be a journey over a few months to put all the information out. So Adrian, was there a few points you wanted to make?
Yes, so through you, Mr. Chair, after the meeting or later this morning, we'll send an email to you with all the information that we've been pulling together to help you be able to explain it to your communities as well. We've got a media release that we're working on at the moment, which we'll send out, and there'll be subsequent releases of information around highlighting some of the pieces of the puzzle that make up the package that you're essentially endorsing today. So as you say, there's a lot of information in there, so there's lots of bits and pieces that we can share with various parts of the community and different audiences in different ways. So there's a bit of a plan of how to do that. Obviously today we'll release the reports and they'll be available on the website, so we'll make sure you have links to where those are sitting. There's a media briefing set up for next Friday to provide a couple of the journalists that are interested with some more detailed sort of delving a little bit deeper into that sort of state and gap information and a bit more of the outcomes. We're doing some of our usual things with social media and some videos and advertising, that kind of thing. We're working through what the water quality information looks like in terms of online versus in hard copy form. So there'll be in today's email a link to a map that provides not only state information across 3 time periods, but also a comparison between the most recent state and the gap outcome. So you'll be able to go between the tabs and delve into each site and change the different measurements. It's really data-rich, powerful map. So I'm sure you'll have great fun with that. Like you mentioned, Councillor McCullum, the teams that are on the ground obviously need to know more about this as well. So we've got a bit of work to do internally to brief all of our, particularly the front-facing on-the-ground teams, but everybody in the organisation will be affected by this in some way. So, yeah, there's a bit of an internal program to work through as well.
Councillor Hall, Chairman Hall.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I think, today is quite special in a lot of ways, and this is actually the start of the journey, not the destination. But I think it is a chance to celebrate the partnership we do have with Te Marama. It's the first time I understand this has been done where we've worked closely together. And while, we may not, there was quite a variation probably between the community, but we are weaving that together. Very wisely, everybody's agreed to keep it in draft and principle to see what comes out of this process. But it gives really good guidance, I guess, to the regional forum who will report back to us eventually on a way forward and heading down the limit setting journey. We actually probably were ahead of the game a little bit in incorporating the mountains of the sea and Te Mano Tawai in our earlier discussions. It is now, of course, with the NPS 2020, it is explicitly stated, and that actually is a sea change. I mean, in the past, the hierarchy has always been probably drinking water for people, and after that, animals, etc. It now puts Te Mano Tawai at the top, and that is significant. That will be challenging, but I look forward to the partnership continuing and actually seeing tangible improvements as we head down this journey. I know iwi in particular have been frustrated about the time it has taken to start to see some of these things, and it's not going to happen tomorrow, but I think we are actually putting a roadmap together that will take us on that journey. So thank you to the staff and everybody who has been involved in this, because I think it is a significant milestone.
Thank you for that. Stu?
Kia ora koutou. I'd just like to say, I guess, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be part and parcel of this program as well. And it's been a real pleasure to be sitting here and to see changes taking place. I think I made the statement once before, until we've honoured that first contract that was signed in New Zealand, i.e. the treaty, I consider that all other contracts or other agreements after that are flawed if that original one's not honoured. And so to be sitting here today and to see the recognition that's given over to the treaty and those principles of the treaty and the clauses within that treaty, but just acknowledging the treaty and the treaty rights and the tangata whenua within this water plan, it's I would say it's a real privilege for me, and I'll speak on behalf of Te Ao Marama and Papatipurunang and such like to be, as Alistair Smale saying, this is groundbreaking, that what's happening here. And I guess it's a challenge also because we're basically, hopefully we're setting the template for others to use and follow. And so it's really incumbent that we get this one right, isn't it? And so it's, and as I've always said, it's about us talking to each other and not about each other, and that's what we've done. And so we've had to learn to understand some of the issues that need to be addressed as we go along, and because we're well aware that the province needs to prosper and people need to be able to go and do those things that they do and live the lives that they want to live and such like. But as I've always said, let's establish that environmental capital, and it looks like, for me anyway, I'm feeling pretty good about. I think that's where we're heading, really, is establishing that environmental capital, and then we do what we do with the interest that we get off that capital. So thank you to all the staff too. It's been a whole lot of work and been a lot of reading, I know that, but no, I just appreciate being part and parcel of this whole program.
Thank you.
Can I just say, while I've got speaking, the generation, we seem to be uncertain about whether it's 25 or 30 years. Can I just state that our iwi management plan look at a generation as being 25? So if there's some uncertainty there, I'd like to help you and suggest that we might say 25 instead of, is it 25 or 30? It seems to be a bit of an unknown as we move through. I'd like to recommend that we look at 25 years. That might give me an opportunity to be here to see that.
Oh, don't beat yourself up. Okay, thank you for that. I just would concur with the comments that have been made, certainly about the work and the direction. I've just had a few days in Wellington, and it's been reported to me by people in other parts of New Zealand that the Minister is saying there is something happening in Southland that is quite exciting, and as a way forward, he's quite encouraged by it. So I think, that's another affirmation that, but also with that goes an expectation, and we shouldn't underestimate that. Not only do we have a great deal of confidence in what's happening, other parts of New Zealand may well choose to have this as a model as well. So can we just acknowledge that? Are we ready to vote? Are you moving, Councillor?
With great pride.
The recommendations 1 to 4, we'll deal with them in one cluster. Is there a seconder? Yeah, Chairman Horrell. Any further discussion?
Just, Mr. Chairman, if I may just clarify, some of the documentation talks about, for example, 30 years, Stuart. So there is some confusion within the documentation that we're receiving, but maybe we can work on a 25-year program of thinking, and maybe that's the way forward as we have this discussion.
I'd just like to be at that end of it. Maybe.
Yeah. Okay. Something that may be clarified in a later document. All right, I'm going to put the motion. Those in favour will say aye. Aye. Against, no. That's agreed. We move to item 2. And Lucy, talk to us on this.
Yeah, just invite Vicky from the team to come
Righto.
along and talk to the item.
Good. Vicky.
Morning.
Morning.
So this morning I'm going to give you an update on where we are at with the appeals on the Water and Land Plan. In November, Judge Wardwick issued her 4th interim decision. This was a closer to final decision on the objectives, but not a final decision. She's reserving that until all of the appeals have been resolved. So all of the rules in the appendices, so that hopefully isn't too far off, but it was unfortunately not what was in the November decision. So through the agenda item there, I've just highlighted some of the changes that have been made to the objectives. So the 4th interim decision was only on the objectives. It didn't address the policies that were part of the Topic A group of hearings. They will be addressed with the Topic B rules. So the court directed us to do a Section 32AA evaluation to assess the effectiveness and the appropriateness of the objectives. So that Section 32AA has not been done for the policies yet. So that will happen when we get to a resolution with the rules, and they will be grouped together, and a 32AA will be done on the rules and policies as a group. So as we're in the process of doing a mediation planning, we've had a mediation timetable set from the court, which is very tight. It's going to be a significant amount of work over about a 6-week period for each of the
issues, each of the appeal points. We have asked for an extension on that for an extra couple of weeks, but we haven't had confirmation from the court yet. So moving forward, we've got 7 groups of topics for the rules. And we have started off with, we're going backwards, we've numbered the groups, B1 to B7, but they are being addressed not in sequential order. So we're dealing with some of the discrete issues at the moment. We've started direct negotiations, been in contact with Federated Farmers and Forest and Bird on a couple of minor rules that aren't linked too tightly with anything else, so we can try and get those resolved without getting to mediation. And the hope is that the group of topics that we're addressing at the moment will be able to continue with that and hopefully not end up with mediation on those ones. There won't be any mediation this year. The court thankfully decided that the timeframes were too short to be prepared for mediation this year, given that they close on the 20th of December. So we're unlikely to have a mediation set down until February of next year. That hasn't been confirmed yet. We're still waiting to hear dates for mediation. In the meantime, the staff in policy and planning are undertaking assessments of the provisions against the NES and the new NPS 2020. There will be situations where some of the appeal points will be moot purely because of the government regulation overriding the rules in the plan. We're undertaking that assessment at the moment. There have been a couple of parties that have withdrawn, and there has been some parties who have indicated that they are likely to withdraw because of the NES and the NPS 2020, but would still like us to undertake that analysis before they formally withdraw. So that is where we're at the moment.
Thank you for that. Are there any questions? Councillor Beard?
Yes. So is there an indication yet as to where the mediation will be held? Will we get it back in here in the city, or will we have to travel up to Christchurch?
It's likely to be in Invercargill. Some of it may be through AVL with the courts in Christchurch. They've been fairly flexible with that. But as we don't have dates or anything scheduled, it's still up in the air. But I would suspect it would be Invercargill for mediation.
And how many appellants are still standing then, if you think, by the end of it?
22 to 23.
All right, so no one else, but there's still a reasonable number there.
There are, yes. When you say it like that, yes. There are a lot of those, and there's a lot of 274 parties involved there as well. So there'll be, like I said, once we go through that analysis of the NES against their specific appeals, we may find that some of those appellants actually they won't be able to progress their appeal any further. So that's where we're doing that work at the moment.
Lucy? Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. So I'd just like to, that we have asked for Invercargill to be the prime location for the mediation where possible, as Vicky said, using Zoom and other ways if we need to for those parties that might be Christchurch based. So that's what we've asked. And the scope issue that Vicky's alluded to as we do that analysis is that kind of narrowing of the scope of people's appeal points. That's where we'd be expecting that some people's appeal points might become moot, as Vicky has said, and it'd be then upon the appellants to determine whether they want to remove those appeal points. Our analysis, the 6-week timeline that Vicky mentioned is what has to happen in advance of each individual mediation commencing. So that those 6 weeks, they don't stack on top of each other, they'll be happening concurrently. And part of that will be our analysis, which will then provide with to the parties for them to make determinations about what they want to move forward with or not.
So not much holidays planned, or?
Councillor Chairman Horrell?
Yes, I'm just looking at objective 18. I assume this is the one that at one stage there was, we're going to delete, but Judge Borthwick decided that she wanted. It's actually, just reading it, it's a very strong objective. I'm just wondering what the implications will flow through from there, where it talks about responsibility to safeguard the region's land, soils and water is upon all resource users, regardless of the activities being undertaken. So that to me sounds quite a strong and wide-ranging objective.
Reasonably aggressive.
There was a fair amount of discussion about Objective 18 over the last few months. And yes, we did brief you on before, there was a view that given the strengthening of the other objectives, that possibly it was no longer necessary. The judge corrected our interpretation of where we thought we were heading with Objective 18, and she was very keen that it was retained in some form. The finalised version there is where everybody managed to get to in terms of agreement. In terms of what the implications are, that will come through topic B and into the rule framework more widely.
Roy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Picking up on that point, I'm really quite concerned through this process as the court deals with these concepts that the forum just asked the forum to go away and deal with. The court is effectively having first go at it and trying to bring it through the first cut of the what you've got there in paragraph 21, the layout of the items to be addressed. But I'm really looking for workability at the end of it. And I'm not sure whether at the end of it, their land sustainability consents and compliance people will actually have something that is workable on the ground and farmers actually understand what they need to do. I think it's very easy to have I hate using the word theoretical view of how things should happen, but we deal with practicalities on the ground and taking communities with us. And we need to make sure that those are workable rules in a way that are robust, people understand them, and they believe that is the right thing to do. So we've got quite a bit of work to do in that. So I really hope that actually comes through, especially that Objective 18. But my comment, Jim, was really around what was laid out in paragraph 21 was to making sure that we had workability out the other end and certainty, because the community is actually quite fragile. I know I've said that a number of times, and some of the stuff that's come through, they're actually telling us, I don't know how we can do it. It's not saying we won't do it, it's just we don't know how to do it, and we're going to have to provide solutions as well as giving guidance to direction as well. So we just need to keep those things in mind.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, part of the mediation as we move into those the topics addressing the farming rules of the plan, we will have involvement with consents and compliance and land use to make sure as much as we can, because I mean this isn't completely in our control what we are end up with, that we do end up with something that's functional. So we will have, as we are going into that mediation, we will be communicating with consents and compliance and land sus and whatever science expertise we need as we go into that mediation to make sure that we come out with the best possible functional outcome.
And through you, Chair, that's likely to be involving directly those people in the mediation, either in advance of or actually in the room, to make sure we've got consents and compliance, science and land sus input on where those bookends are that we've talked about a bit before, like which direction and how much can we push one way or another, and where we want to be making sure that things are workable and practical. I think one of the interesting things, and as Vicky alluded to, it's not a final decision, but we have been given direction to change the plan. So the objectives will be altered, and they are moving in a similar direction as the national suite of packages, companies of the Central Freshwater Package in terms of Tāna to Y, and that korowai of the cloak of objectives, that all other objectives and rules have to be looked through that lens. So I think that there is some certainty, but as we go through into the rules space, there's going to be a lot more opportunity to really tighten some of those things up.
So, there's a subcommittee of council, they'll be used through that process as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Critical.
Councillor Stevens?
Mr. Chairman, just number 19, the physiographic policies. I mean, obviously that's going to affect quite an effect on Objective 18, and I think that certainly I'm pleased to hear that Lance's sustainability and consents are going to be involved, because it's certainly going to have an effect as to the physiographic. I mean, we had a lot of pushback from the farming community at that time as to the accuracy of those. So that, to me, is pretty important.
And I think that, as Vicky alluded to as well, the linkage between those policies and the rule framework is really critical, and that was why the judge was keen to not make final determinations on those policies until we've gone through the mediation on the rules. I think one thing we haven't mentioned yet as well is time frame in terms of the total wrapping up of this. Vicky did say it's going to be tight and there's going to be a lot of work needs doing. 1st of June next year is when we've been directed to have all mediation finished by. So that doesn't give us a lot of time, and that includes having consent orders drafted, etc. So yeah, that it's going to be flat stick on mediation for the first part of next year.
Right. Yeah, Councillor Beard.
So just on that physiographics and the likelihood that the maps could end up being in the plan, I understand there was a method or a process to be able to question the accuracy of the maps. Is any work being done on that, or will that be fleshed out more with the Part B as to how that can work? And again, it's an affordable process that farmers can go through, rather than thinking, oh, the option's there, but it'll cost you $10,000 or $20,000 or some large amount of money, which becomes unworkable.
So through you, Mr. Chair, potentially that won't get worked out through topic B. What will get worked out through topic B is the opportunity to provide additional evidence for the physiographic zone policies and their implementation through the rule package. So through mediation, that will all be being tested, but we wouldn't be ending up with a recommendation at the end of it for what farmers may or not be able to challenge within that space. I think the planned change to come will enable some of that alteration if alterations are needed, but the phase that we'll go through now is only going to be within scope of what's been appealed. So if matters have been appealed in that regard, then we've got some scope to actually talk about them, or parties would have scope to talk about them. So the physiographic zones is likely to be a hot topic, and their usage and the map inclusion was one that did come up. Certainly at the first hearing. I wasn't at the second hearing, but at the first hearing the judge had a lot of questions and comments about, well, you're making statements about these things but the maps aren't in there, and it didn't seem to be resonating with her why we separated those two things out. So that's just an anecdotal, comment. I don't know what that might shake out as, but yeah, they are interested to see how we might use them.
It's a bit flippant to say take her on farm and show the physiographics. Because you can't see it.
It's probably, we're not going to get too far if we start dealing with fine detail today. This is a bit of a helicopter view of what's happening, and we just need to bear that in mind. Councillor Guyton, you've got a
Thank you,
comment.
Mr. Chairman. With that in mind, that taking a helicopter view, it's a bit hard to explain what I'm meaning, but I want to ask Lucy. We're hearing a lot from the farming community today about the details and the workability. But I'm wondering the position the court is taking, given that they will need to be, the judge will need to be looking at a more global view, a more holistic view. How's that balance going? Because I could see that if there's a need for change, and it's a need that's greater than, say, the economy or practical on the ground behaviours. So, for example, if there's a real need for farming to change, is the court likely to be strong on that and say, well, we can see that there's going to be some pain on the ground, but we're going to hold to that broader picture? Am I making sense to you?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think the court, so the judge won't be hearing the mediation. We'll have a commissioner appointed who will be sitting over the top of the mediation process. So just from a procedural perspective, in terms of the how's it going, I think the national direction is such now that the plan we can't be any more lenient than national direction. So the court will be aware of that. And so once we get through mediation and we're putting up agreed positions that everybody in the room might agree to, the judge still might not. So if she feels that we've not gone far enough or hard enough, or that overall, that we're not doing as much as we could or much as we should, she still has the power to make the ultimate decision about that. I think I'm being kind of tongue-in-cheek using the word overall, but it was a real pain in my... It was talked about an awful lot, the word overall, in regard to Objective 6, and what came out was actually making it about every water body. And that difference is a real distinction that's changed now with the plan. That Objective 6 alteration is significant and doesn't allow for kind of trade-offs to exist across the region. So that in of itself sets a higher direction and a higher bar than previously existed. And we now, on a consent by consent basis, are having to give effect to that. So the direction of travel is only going one way, and that is higher and harder.
Thanks, that's a good answer.
Chairman Hall.
Well, just following on from what Lucy's said, we're either in the fortunate or unfortunate position of being the plan change that's going through after a lot of national changes. And the reality is a lot of people will think, well, we submitted on a plan, but what's going to come out the other side is certainly going to be quite a bit stronger. And we can debate the merits of the democracy and moving away from what's agreed. But the reality is we're going to have a plan. The objectives tell you right now that it is going to strengthen policies and rules as we go through this.
I think as well that can be seen as a positive thing in terms of that certainty that you were talking about before, because we had to do a plan change. We knew that another plan change was going to be coming, and that was really where it was going to get harder in terms of setting the limits and being able to, you know, make some determinations about numbers and where and who and how. And I think that now with national direction on top of the courts process, the plan's in a stronger place for that limit setting, which enables the community to know where they need to engage for the next bit. Because this isn't done when we get through appeals. I think that's the real message I would be putting out into the community. This is just the first step, and the next bit's going to be quicker because we've got this new freshwater planning process that the plan change will be able to go through. So the community as a whole need to be preparing for submissions in the first instance. There's no two bites of the cherry in the freshwater planning process. So they need to, if they're engaged and they're interested, they'll need to be submitting up front. So.
All right, we've satisfied our interest in this topic to be able to pass the resolutions 1 and 2.
I'll move the
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Is there a seconder?
A second.
Alan Beard. No further discussion. I'll put the motion. Those in favour would say aye. Against, no, that's agreed. We move to item 3, air quality monitoring. Please. Right, here we go. Yeah. Alan? Yes.
Good morning.
Morning.
This morning going to give you a bit of an update on the air quality monitoring over the winter period for 2020. Most of this we can take as read, I suppose. Just running through the background there, obviously we're monitoring in accordance with national environmental standards for air quality, and it's primarily a health-based regulation and looking at the impacts on human health. The PM10 monitoring for the winter in 2020, we've again in both Invercargill and Gore recorded exceedances of the national environmental standards. As a reminder, that standard sets a limit of 50 micrograms per cubic metre as a 24-hour average. And in Invercargill this winter we exceeded that 13 times, while in Gore we exceeded 3 times. So this is a slight increase on last year. So in 2019 we had quite a warmer, windier winter, which meant we recorded fewer exceedances of the standard. So despite last year looking like a slight improvement, we have actually gone backwards, if you like. It should be noted though that over the course of the entire monitoring record, the concentrations, the average concentrations are coming down slightly. So our peaks are getting lower, which is a good sign, but there is still a bit of work to be done, and it will be a slow process for us to get to achieving that PM10 standard. Something else to note in there is that the standard is under review, has been for a wee bit of time now, and I'm advised by MFE that it won't reach any kind of gazetting stage until likely September in 2021. That's the timeframe they're looking at this stage. So there's still a period of time to go there before we get to any changes in that. In regards to those changes, you may be aware we're looking towards a PM 2.5 standard, and so we have started monitoring of PM 2.5 in Invercargill, Gore and Winton. At this stage, Winton is looking okay. It's looking to comply with the proposed standard. Both Invercargill and Gore are unlikely at this stage to achieve the proposed PM 2.5 standard. And as an indication, over that May to August period, Invercargill would have exceeded the proposed standard 35 times, and Gore would have exceeded it 21 times. So the move to the new standard will mean a bit more work, I suppose, to get to achieving compliance with it. But that's assuming it goes through as proposed by MFE. In the PM 2.5 monitoring space, we've also been fortunate to be involved with a project that NIWA were running. So that was the ODIN project, so it stands for Outdoor Dust Information Node. And they've been working with South Alive as well to look at indoor-outdoor interactions of air quality, particularly in South City. So for our benefit, we had 25 little ODINs across the city, and that helps us better understand the spatial distribution of PM 2.5 in Invercargill. And the indoor information also gives us an idea of the quality of the housing and the flow of that pollutant between the outdoor environment and the indoor, where people typically think they are less exposed, I guess. So NIWA are working through analysing the results on that at the moment. I do have a meeting with Ian Longley from NIWA next week, so I hope to have a bit more of an update from him then. As we look to future monitoring, we will obviously be continuing to monitor both PM10 and 2.5 in Invercargill and Gore. Our Winton PM 2.5 monitoring will continue for at least another winter, and if after that time we're still looking compliant, we will utilise that equipment in another urban area in Southland to continue kind of our SOE survey monitoring. Also, an issue I've raised there worth noting is that there is a concern with the air quality up in Mataura, and that's been raised through some monitoring undertaken by Golder to inform the Alliance consent application, and that indicated that the concentrations of PM 2.5 in Mataura are unlikely to meet the proposed standard. So coming next winter, we will be installing a site in Mataura to undertake some of our own investigations up there to confirm or otherwise those results that have been observed by Golder. And we're also looking towards a little bit more spatial work in Gore next winter. Yeah, so the next steps are really, as I've described, just continuation of monitoring and also work feeding into the long-term plan, development of the equality strategy and actions associated with that. One of the things we've highlighted in there is the need to better understand public perceptions of air quality and the social aspects. We need to really understand the drivers for change. For people to change their home heating. That's our main issue, and we're finding it's a very slow process, and so I think it's an area that we would be looking a little bit more in.
Councillor Guyton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got 3 questions, so maybe I could put them to you, Owen, you can pick and choose. The first one is easy. What is it about Winton
that requires a monitoring or?
No, that puts them ahead of the game.
Primarily it's smaller population. I guess both Invercargill and Gore is the population. Gore a little bit the topography as well. And so there's less home heating in use. But yeah, that makes
No,
sense.
that's good, thanks. And the second one was climate change. You must be thinking about that because it'll impact heavily, could impact heavily on your work. Have you got an algorithm that you can feed into everything you do that says this is what's most likely to happen, this is what we best should do? Are you at that stage yet, or are you just got your fingers crossed like everybody else?
We're not at that stage yet, no. It is something that we're conscious of and thinking about, but it's not something we've got that level of understanding of yet.
And the third thing is just quickly, I don't know if this is in your sphere of influence, but with warmer homes comes greater outgassing from within the home, from the materials the home is built from, particularly formaldehyde and some other nasty things. Is that something that your team is aware of or looks at?
It's not something our team has a responsibility for, I guess. We're focused on ambient air quality, which is the outdoor air quality. Indoor air quality is one of those areas that's still a little bit of a hot potato, if you like. There is now a working group formed that involves researchers from GNS and NIWA that are looking more at the indoor air quality space. But in terms of regulating that or research, I guess it's not something we've had a significant amount of involvement with. We're very much aware of the interactions between indoor outdoor, but the contaminants coming from indoor materials it's not something we monitor or look closely at this stage.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I've got 4 councillors that have indicated their questions or comments, starting with Councillor Beard.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. So with regards to understanding the components of the air quality problem as in what's being captured, do we know whether it's, or the proportions that are vehicle exhaust related versus chimney, which might be coal or wood? So do we have a problem in the still burning low quality coals versus vehicles that are also generating a proportion of it? So what's their understanding of the components of that air quality problem?
Yeah, so through Mr. Chair, there are a couple of pieces of work we've done in the past. One of those is the emission inventory, which is essentially a desktop study that looks at emission factors, housing numbers, wood and coal burner numbers, to give us an indication of where the contaminants are coming from. That study put home heating very much at the forefront of the issue. Traffic was down around 1% to 2% for Invercargill. And industry, equally makes up a lower portion of it. So we were able to know fairly well that the home heating is our issue. The second piece of work for Invercargill alone was a source apportionment study. So that took the particles on our filters and it was analysed by GNS and similarly provided that split of where the different components were coming from. That also included some natural sources, which is good to understand, but not something we have direct control over. So traffic is a very low portion of our issue. And we know that as well through the temporal patterns of our concentrations. So they peak generally sort of mid-morning in winter, and then again the largest peak in the evening. That's not when we have our peak traffic flows.
So coal burning is still a bigger component or biggest. How would we ascertain of the fuels that are using for out the chimneys? Have we got enough determination, or can we be firmer on what is burnt? Are we at the stage of trying to remove some of that low quality coal?
Yeah, I think coal is definitely a significant contributor to our issue, more so than a wood burner, compliant wood burner. And there's always scope for more regulation in that area. It's not something we've kind of, or I guess we looked at when the plan change came through. We looked at putting a limit on the sulphur content, not on the ban on coal itself, and that wasn't particularly favourable at the time. But definitely, if we were to look at a straight out ban on coal use, we would see a significant improvement in air quality.
Councillor McCallum?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This actually concerns me a little bit because if you look at the Invercargill map on page 27, there's actually quite a pattern around that 10 to 13 over a long period of time. We haven't really moved the average, we've just moved the odd extremity and seen a very good season. And I agree with you that topography is probably our biggest issue. I was in Matera one day coming home and I could hardly breathe the air, but over a 24-hour period it actually evened it out. So I think maybe when we look at 2.5, we may be better off to start to look at a public health perspective, and that instantaneous impact is probably something we really need to start to put our head around and not average it out, because the conversation sort of goes to we play it down, but the information we have here tells me we've got a significant problem. We've got a barrier. So even if you go to 2.5 and your numbers go back to 35, which they were in 2010, we're no further ahead. So we've actually got to do something else. There's a barrier here that we next need to break through, whether it's perception or whatever. So I don't think the answer is in the monitoring side. The answer is actually somewhere else. And I think we're going to see this in a number of things that come to this council over the next few years. We're going to have to, and monitoring tells us one thing, but the answer is sitting in another work stream somewhere else. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm really wondering whether we should be starting to look with a 2.5 coming and some sort of understanding of what the 24-hour period looks like and its peaks, because I think the peaks would be far worse than what is, because we have people die every day because of asthmatic problems, and this is not helping it. We need to start looking at other solutions and other ways of actually combating this.
You got a comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. The answer isn't in finding more information and monitoring more. It is understanding what is going to drive people to make changes and value good air quality. So that is something we've highlighted through the strategy for the long-term plan. It's going to be a focus.
Just quickly as well, Mr. Chair, we've got a cross-organisational care group that includes people from my team as well as the monitoring stuff. And previously, obviously, with the air plan review, there's a need for us to kind of wrap around a bit of a more comprehensive way to tackle the issue. So, yeah, as Owen said, it's not just about the monitoring, it's how we can actually...
I know from Manchester we've had public health, I'm not sure who it is from the our health support system, DHB, in some of our meetings as well, and they're concerned as well. So I was trying to link in a bigger, wider, it's not just air problem, it's air collective problem, it's an Invercargill, it's a Matera, it's a Gore problem, and we need to change our approach, I think.
Through Mr. Chair, that is something we have worked on a little bit with our South City project or pilot project, looking at drawing some of those groups together, which public health we're part of. We got some of the way there, but I think we found it was challenging to get buy-in kind of at that staff level. And what we really need is the governance to help us out in that area. Also, there is a wider group, so we meet regularly with colleagues from Otago, so that includes obviously the District Health Board and colleagues from Otago Regional Council, the Cozy Homes Trust, which is I guess Southland Homes Trust equivalent. And we have those meetings a couple of times a year. So we are sharing ideas across Otago Southland, and and trying to get more of that coordinated approach. But there's definitely more scope for us to work more closely with the TAs, with Invercargill City and Core District Council.
Councillor Ludlow.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. This kind of dovetails nicely into what Councillor McCallum was just asking, actually, because notwithstanding the fact that social conversation still needs work, you said that we've got more work to do. If you had a wish list of what else we can do, because I was involved in that South City project. What else? Have you got something in the back of your head that if you had the resources we could do, that might help get some traction? Because it's getting to the frustration point where we're coming back there. We just need something. Have you got anything on your wish list that if we resourced it, it might make a difference?
I think we've talked in the past about having a dedicated position for education engagement with the community, and I think that would be a very beneficial role for the organisation to have. We've seen the likes of ECAN and Nelson City who've made some significant progress in this area, have put resourcing into that over the time, and seen the benefits of it. I think the other thing that we could look more closely at is the regulation side of things, so around our coal use. I think we do start to need to get a bit tougher on that, and we will see the proposed changes to national environmental standards suggest that new burners won't be able to burn coal. That's what they're proposing, which is essentially what we already have in our regional air plan. But that means that existing burners will take a period of time to phase out. So our phase outs run through until 2032, I believe. So we may not see some of those, coal use eliminated entirely until that stage. So that would be a couple of things that we could be doing.
Thanks.
Councillor Horrell.
Yes, just following on from some of the other comments, I think we are getting past the stage of simply monitoring. I've got a few hobby horses I've mentioned in the past, and I think when you look at that graph, initially we made some progress, but really with yearly mode. So that tells me we need to do more. So I've got one or two questions. Have we actually moved out of education into enforcement? I imagine it can't be that difficult to find out when burners we're putting in. Do we actually know whether people are actually replacing the ones that actually are supposed to be replaced already?
This is one of those areas of it's a little bit difficult to handle on. We have information from Invercargill City Council on new burners going in. We don't necessarily know always whether that's a burner that's been replaced. So the City Council records alone aren't complete and only go back so far. So there could be burners there that we've accounted for that could be 30 years old that have been replaced. But we have a bit of an idea of tracking those replacements, but it's not as easy as it could be, I guess.
Yeah, the other thing I've been thinking about for quite some time is actually some targeted intervention. Probably get a few volunteers in winter time, frosty nights, actually go and drive around some of those areas like the Pomona area, perhaps the Mataras, and actually identify properties where the conversation should be held. Because I think if we had that targeted intervention, we might actually make quite a bit of progress. And the other one is, I've talked about in the past, is encouraging both Invercargill and Gore to create a bylaw that means you have to upgrade at the point of sale. I've always thought it's a reasonably painless way of doing it. So what would we act with Lucy's group? Would that be the place we'd raise that? We seem we've made some progress, but we need to start doing things differently to actually improve it. And I would have thought that the territorials will have the health of their residents as a high priority. And I think these are not expensive interventions, I think, and we can make some progress.
Councillor Stevens?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question. Have we any idea of how many fires actually are compliant?
We have, through the emission inventories, we have an indication. So it's based on a number of records. I guess there's the City Council records and the census information that's used to provide that. It's not, it is just an estimate. It's not an exact number.
The reason I ask is, I mean, if we're going to move this forward, maybe we've got to do a little more than just provide an interest-free loan. We may have to look at something a little more serious than that. So between the City Council and the Regional Council, whether that's a possibility.
Are you inferring a penalty regime or something of that nature?
No. Financial assistance more so than just a loan. So that's probably where I'm coming from with that. Yes, okay.
Can we go to Councillor Essler next?
Yeah, I think that we've got to be aware that winter warmth is sort of the bottom line here, that you can't sort of impose something that is, if a burner is the house's sole source of heat and anything else is unaffordable, we just have to live with that to some extent. The other one I was just wondering about if a consumer can find all the information needed. In my case, I've got, it's quite an old burner, it's got quite a small firebox, it works reasonably well, but probably not as efficiently as it should. And I'm burning only wood, and I'm self-sufficient in wood because I grow it on the property, and the only cost is the petrol for the chainsaw, and even chopping it up. I've devolved that responsibility to my little buddy. I bought him an axe for his birthday.
We're looking forward to his next birthday.
You might get a chainsaw.
I'm just wondering if there's someone who can come out and sort of assess what's there and say, well, look, these are the options, these are the suppliers for something better, if all that information is available in one sort of hit.
Yeah, so through Mr. Chair, that's, I guess it's part of the resource I was suggesting before, to have someone to provide that. There is a service at the moment, I guess, through Awaroa Synergy, who provide, obviously, the clean air loans. They will come out and provide an assessment of the property, looking right through from insulation to heating, and provide some recommendations on what might need to be done. They have access to all of that information. The other avenue for accessing information is through our Breathe Easy Southland website. So we have all the information about rules, links through to compliant burners, and all of MFE's information there as well. So there are a few avenues there. I think it could be improved by having a dedicated resource to go out and meet with people to run through that.
Stu?
Oh, yeah, sure. I just, being a person who's moved from Riverton into South City, Burn Street of South City, when I found myself walking out the back door of a night and turning straight around and walking straight back in the door, because you literally can't breathe out there. And I would suggest that it gets right down to the low quality of the fuel, the coal that are burning out there. You can almost bite it. It becomes that thick, and I don't, for somehow there needs to be, I would suggest, regulation on the quality of the fuels that are being supplied to the market, because we know the state of the economy right now, and people are going out and buying that low quality fuel that's available to them, that's been readily made available, and that's what's, I would suggest to you, that's the cause of the main cause of the problem out there right now, not today, but during the winter time. I honestly, you can literally bite the air. It's just, you can hardly see the street lights at times, and and I'm really noticing, because I've come from Riverton into Invercargill, and I'll put it straight down to the quality of the fuel that's been put on the market. And I think we all know which fuel I'm talking about, without naming it.
Right, are there any other comments? We've had a reasonably fulsome discussion, councillor Beard.
I think for the length of time I've been involved in looking at this council from outside looking in and now inside looking out, we've not shown enough backbone when it comes to air quality. We spend millions, tens of millions, probably hundreds of millions of dollars on water quality issues, and we spend a very small amount on air quality issues. Yet from a human health perspective, air quality is going to kill far more humans than one of my animals having defecated on a paddock, that some portion of it gets into the river. We're not showing enough effort. Low quality coal, high coal, lignites, they don't have a place in burning in houses. They need to be removed from the city. They might still have a place for industry. Get some decent fuels in or turn to electricity.
Councillor Maker.
I just really like the idea of this education role. I think what are our next steps? Like, how can we make a recommendation or look into that? Because it seems like everybody's really passionate about this, and I think that seems to be, for me, the most sensible next step. I'm not sure if you can answer that.
You're going to comment on that?
Well, it's because I think we're all saying the same thing. We're frustrated with the progress. I just want to lift it up a little bit. It looks like the government has a PM10 standard. It's looking at defining that down to a PM 2.5 for a whole lot of reasons, social and other human health reasons as well. Should we be starting to think and asking staff to go back and say, look, we want to have a better look at this. The government will only put up with so much for a certain length of time, and the monitoring will say that you're not meeting it, and then it will enforce over the top, like with an MPS or some other NES or some other driver, to actually bring this forward. You could actually argue we've been monitoring for long enough now, we know what the patterns are. Is it time to actually look at the next step? I don't know what the next step is, Mr. Chairman, but I think we could ask staff to go away and put some thinking on, maybe through a workshop, to actually think, now how do we actually take this forward? And what have we done that's worked? What do we actually need to do going forward? Is probably the best way to address this at a high level.
Are you going to respond to that, Lucy?
Yeah, just to both the Councillor May's point as well as Councillor McCallum's point. I think that the time is now. You guys are having long-term plan conversations about the next 3 years and onwards. I certainly have felt since I've been here, and I share the frustration with Councillor Baird as well, since arriving, the fresh water's been the focus, but the air plan is one of the kind of poor cousins that keeps getting kicked down the road because, you know, we've got all of this water work and not enough resources to do what we need to do to implement those. But the air plan needs to be reviewed, and the NESAC coming in is probably going to introduce a 2.5 PM10, but that's not going to assist us any further in terms of actually getting the results on the ground. So I think that given the conversations today and given the level of interest, I think it is beholden on staff and on yourselves for your LTP conversations to frame up a bit more of a stronger line about what we want and what needs to be done to move forward in this space a bit more proactively. And some of that is in the air plan review, because we need to be regulating as well as encouraging and enabling behaviour change. So, yeah, in and outside of my team.
Are you indicating?
Well, I'm happy to move the recommendation, Mr. Chairman, but I think along what Lucy said, I think we need to look at the targeted interventions and even actually look at we've only got one provider for the insulation and they seem to be behind. We need to actually have a look at all the options we need. We've got at our fingertips to actually move this thing forward, but happy to move the recommendation.
Yeah, I think, were you looking to make comment too, Councillor Ludden?
I just wanted, if I might, it's not all doom and gloom, because I'm really encouraged to see that the likes of James Hargis College, which is the second largest secondary school in the South Island, is upgrading their burner. So no longer will there be large plumes of black smoke coming out of their boiler chimney, there will be large plumes of not black smoke, perhaps. So it's not, actually those kind of changes are really significant also in those semi-industrial spaces.
They've got tall chimneys, and the tall chimneys help goes up, goes.
What, 'cause
We
you've got
have a
more students
motion to move the recommendation. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Bonnie. Any further discussion? I will put the recommendation. Those in favour say aye, against no. That's agreed. And we will probably have staff have a look at some sort of work plan going forward. And now we move to work plan. Item 4.
So we've covered off quite a number of items of the work plan already, but a couple of other things I just wanted to draw attention to. So we've heard about the court and the topic A matters. One thing I didn't say when Vicky was in the room, and I meant to, was a nod to thank staff for the huge amount of effort that went into doing that 32AA report. It was very significant. It was put upon us and took a lot of energy and a lot of time. And the court obviously was pleased enough with it that then led on to their fourth interim decision. The team's obviously very heavily involved in the implications for the essential freshwater package and what that means for us as an organisation, and also what that means for the People, Water and Land programme. So we're feeding into Bonnie's programme and into the development of the regional forums work. And as I say, yeah, water is taking up a vast amount of my time and the team's time at the moment. Coastal plan was slightly slowed down, but the team who've been involved in the water related work are going to be back on the coastal plan from the new year. So you'll be hearing more about that from early 2021. Air plan we've just talked about, but yeah, really keen that staff will, off the back of this meeting, kick that back into gear, and hopefully as part of the LTP conversations we'll get that resourced. The hazard management stuff, so LiDAR still haven't had a clear window break for any flying to happen yet down here, but they're waiting for 3 days in a row of good weather, good solid wind-free, clear skied weather in Southland to commence.
Waiting too long.
The middle of winter when the air quality's really bad.
Yeah. So everything is underway, and we are putting in place the project plan and the data handling requirements so that when flying does start, we're ready to go. I've got a bit of an update from Russell on the RLTP work. So the draft RLTP has been edited to reduce some of the content with some of the background information being put into the appendices. The programme section has been drafted, includes inputs from the TAs and NZTA. The information is going to the combined RTC's workshop this week, Friday. Yep. And the work was initially intended to, that workshop was intended to consider the prioritisation of the project, but NZTA and the Ministry only got the State Highway Improvement Programme stuff out to him last week, on Monday, actually. So that's not now going to happen until probably February, the actual prioritisation, but we are still in good shape and on track. In addition to the above, the RTCs are being provided with copies of the low risk and low cost improvement projects for the state highways. It's projects that are under $2 million. They're also in draft as well because NZTA is still working on them. And they're also going to be including the NZTA investment proposal for information too. So yeah, he said if he's happy, if anybody's got questions that I can't answer, I can go back to him with those. And in case anybody had questions about the cycle trail, 5 kilometres so far has been constructed to a sub-base level, and they'll be starting the top course and sealing in December, weather permitting. Good progress is being made, is what he said about that.
So the base is across the entire.
Just 5 kilometres.
5 kilometres.
Yeah, 5 kilometres. And on the climate change front, so a paper's going to be coming back to full council on the 16th. The only other point that I wanted to reference was to give you an update, a very short update on the cruise ship deed negotiations. We are pretty much finished. We've had to do a signing of a loan provider who is a domestic cruise ship operator. Heritage Expeditions have been given permission to come back in. They are just domestics around New Zealand, yeah. So at the moment, but they do have sub-Antarctic boats, so they've signed the deed for the remainder of this season. So they'll be able to come in tomorrow, I think they're due to come into the fjords. So we had to do a bit of a fast and, get them signed and cross the line.
Get the money.
A couple of weeks ago. Well, that too, yep. And the remainder of the industry will be signing the deed hopefully pre-Christmas, we are hopeful. So yes, which is.
Fairly full program. We got any questions? Anybody want anything illuminated? Someone like to move the resolution? Councillor Stevens, seconded.
I think you did it anyway.
Any further discussion? I'll put the motion, those in favour would say aye, against no, that's agreed. And that concludes our meeting. Thank you for your attendance.
Now,